Great Vintage. Today's DIY is going to be a collaboration with Kimmy from She's in Her Apron. We're going to post her link below. Be sure to click it and subscribe. She has an awesome channel full of homemaking skills, organizing, cooking, anything you ever want to know about keeping house, and she's pretty funny. We're going to take her old used table that she's had for 15 years. It has seen so much use. And we're going to turn it into a farmhouse inspired treasure that she'll be sure to love for years. The very first thing you always want to do when you're starting a project is you're going to want to clean it. You don't have to use anything crazy unless it's extremely greasy. In this case, we just use soap and water. I like to take a bucket with some warm soap and water and a rag and just go to town. Anywhere that might need a little extra love, you can take a scrub brush and really scrub at it. Anything that's on the piece is going to show up in your paint, so make sure to get it all off and prep it so it's nice and clean for paint. So there's 6 screws on the other side of this table. On each side we're going to go ahead and unscrew them, and then we're going to paint the base, and then we'll flip the lid upside down to get the ridge. So to get started, we're going to be using Fairy Chalk Mother High Bond Primer. It's not a necessity when you're using chalk paint to prime, but in this case it's going to be well used, and priming is a great way to see any spots that might bleed through. If we have any bleed through, then we'll just spray those spots with shellac. So let's get spraying, and then we'll add our paint in a minute. So we flipped our table upside down because we're going to be staining the top. We could have taped the edge just to make sure no paint got on it, but in our case we're going to be stripping it all the way down, so if a little bit gets on the edge where we're staining, it's not a big deal, but we need to go ahead and spray here. Alright guys, we're getting ready to distress. Because Kimmy wanted a light distress, I'm using the sanding block. It's a 220. If you want it a little heavier, you could go with a higher grit or use your rotary sander, which is my go-to anytime I want a medium to heavy distress and I want it chippy. But in this case, we're doing it light. So I'm just going to take my sanding block and go along the edges and start to remove the paint. And also I go over all the flat surfaces and smooth it out, because the nice thing about chalk paint is it just turns into like a buttery smooth finish when you buff it with a sand block. So you can see there that it's just barely coming off the edges. We're going to do this similar distress technique to all the chairs, the table base, and the table lip. Alright guys, we're getting ready to sand this tabletop. It is solid wood, which means we can use our belt sander. You always want to be careful when you're sanding a tabletop and you're using a belt sander. If it's not solid wood, you'll take it down to the MDF, and nobody wants that to happen. So once you've verified what it is, you can get started. Our belt sander has 80 grit sandpaper on it, and I'm just going to go back and forth. It's really important you want to sand with the grain. If you go against the grain, you're going to get weird scratch marks in the wrong direction. Okay guys, so we're going to tag team. Zeb's going to finish belt sanding this tabletop, and I'm going to work with my rotary sander along the edge. You're going to want to use 150 grit sandpaper when you're doing your edge, so that way you don't gouge it or reshape it. I just take my rotary sander, and if you look, you've got like this curved edge here, and I push it up against the edge, and then as this spins, this paper will come across here and clean that off. So I do this lip first, and then I'll come across and do there. The nice thing about the rotary sander with this round edge is, like I said, the paper comes around and it'll get this edge in here, and you just go all the way around with the rotary. So now we have our top sanded down. Zeb used the belt sander to take off the finish, and I went around the edge with our rotary. But I want to go ahead and smooth out the top as much as possible. The belt sander can be kind of rough, so we're going to use our rotary sander again with 150 grit sandpaper, and we're just going to go over the entire piece and make sure it's nice and smooth. It kind of gets rid of any rough spots, any squiggles. Now that we've got the tabletop all sanded, we've got to remove all this dust. This is a really important step. If you don't, you're not going to have a nice and smooth finish. So I started off, I already wiped this off with my 4-inch fine brush, and I just kind of sweep off as much as I can. Once I get that and I know that most of my loose dust is gone, then I take my lint-free rag that's damp and I go over the whole piece. This is for 2 reasons. This will pick up any excess dust. It will also kind of show me anywhere that I may have missed sanding, which kind of It wipes it off and then you'll see where it's shining or got a little stain. It also opens up the pores. You really want those pores to be nice and open so that way when you put the stain on, it will accept the stain and look great. So now we're ready for stain, and we really wanted to match the trim work in our house, and we mixed 50% dark walnut with 50% cherry, as close as we could get to the trim work in our house. So I stuck it in a Rubbermaid container and then I shook it up, and this will probably keep in a Rubbermaid container inside your house probably 6 months to a year after you mix it, maybe even longer. Just keep it in a temperature controlled environment and you can use it as often as you need. Alright guys, so we've got this cleaned, primed, painted, stained, and now we're ready to seal. After we put our primer on here, we actually put 2 coats of parchment from Fairy Chalk Brothers, and I forgot to tell you that, so now you know. So sealing is really important on dining tables, especially. They get really hard used. So we do 3 coats on our chairs and 4 to 6 coats on the top of our table. We use our spray gun. It takes about 2-hour drying time in between. It kind of depends on the weather outside. If it's more humid and cold, it'll take longer to dry. So if you want to know how to spray, you can watch me do it, but if you want more information, we've got a link below to our how to spray paint and polyurethane. Alright guys, we've got our finished table here for my friend Kimmy. Say hi.
Hi everybody.
Her channel is She's in Her Apron, and she's in her apron.
Always, always.
All things domestic, running a house, how to cook. I was so impressed when I went inside and she has some fresh pot pies. Everything in our house comes from Costco. So anyways, just kind of a recap of what we did. We've got parchment on the chairs. We did a custom mix stain on the top. We sealed it all with polyurethane so it cleans up nice and easy. Hopefully you'll have lots of home cooked meals around this table.
I'm so excited. It's gorgeous.
So excited. She's pretty excited. Alright, so check the link below. Go ahead and watch her channel. You can watch her video of her reaction to the table, which was pretty awesome. I've never seen anybody so excited. And as always, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to Jami Vintage for more DIY.